You should be able to hand that script to someone, give them a little character breakdown, a little idea of who the actors might be or who you're thinking of, so they have some sort of a mind's eye of that. And if they're reading the script and they don't know exactly what you are thinking, then it's not in the script.
In the room, 52 Jokers Wild.
Hello, everybody. It's a Friday again, and this is In the Room with Garvin and George. And our guest this week is Roisin Kearney, who is an independent media production professional, which sounds exciting, a multi-award-winning screenwriter and director. So, hello, Roisin. Welcome to the show, and thank you for coming to join us. We have been talking to quite a few filmmakers and exploring avenues of where initially how they got there, but we're more talking about general experiences and just seeing what we can find out about what's happening in the industry today. So tell us a little bit about where you find yourself at the moment and how you got there.
Well, I'm currently working as a media professional. I'm making films and TV and doing lots of different stuff in and around that area. And I started off in theatre, moved into indie film when film was on film, and then took a little bit of time out with growing children.
The babbies.
With the babbies. The babbies by 3. So yeah, they can be a bit difficult when they arrive when you're working in this industry. But then kind of went back in 2014-15, started writing again, built up the confidence a little bit again, because that was kind of a major hurdle. And then
I'm going to jump in, George.
Yeah, because actually there's some interesting things there. Yeah,
I'm chomping at the bit, George. I'm chomping at the bit because I hear certain words and I ignore the rest. And I heard you were a professional. I'm going, what? Now, who the hell is going to say, and I'm an unprofessional amateur in the film industry? Or any industry. I'm an unprofessional amateur in the film industry. You're a professional. But we're also finding there's a bunch of people calling themselves pros. And they're not. So, I mean, have you any experience of those professionals that are a little bit amateurish in the industry?
Well, I think everyone kind of starts somewhere. You know,
yes.
You know what I mean? You have to start somewhere. You have to start getting going. You get a lot of help from other people working in the industry, and generally they're very generous. So yeah, like, I mean, it depends on what you want to judge as professional or not professional. You know, there's lots of people who are incredible and professional people working in the film industry, but they will still turn around and help someone coming up through, you know, give them the hand, because it all comes back again. You know what I mean? There's people I'm working with 6 or 7 years later who did massive favours for me and really helped me out in the early years, and vice versa. There's people I helped out in the early years who are coming back and going, "Can you?" And that's how this industry works. It works.
And did you find? I mean, we're talking about professionalism, and one of the things that I found that's quite interesting is that I love filmmaking. I love the whole process of filmmaking, and I wanted to know how it worked. And I think those were sort of critical because it became very clear very early on that you had set parameters of time that you had to work within to make sure the project was done. And the key seemed to be, you've got to get the job done. And if you can compress that time, you've got a little bit of fun time at the end to make, you know, to be creative if you're lucky. And I think over the years that's been, when I started out in the editing department, we had 5 weeks to edit a half-hour film. That got compressed down to 3 weeks. And at one stage, it became a week to do a half-hour program. And Garvin's got me doing this over less than 8 hours. And we're doing an hour now. And you want to be creative. There's things you want to do. And I know that sometimes it irritates Garvin because I do little creative things, and he's going to go, "Nobody told you to do that." And I kind of go, "I know, but this is the only opportunity I'm going to get to do this, and I'm going to do it."
Yeah.
So how have you found yourself working in that, within the constraints of a framework, but still finding an opportunity to be creative?
It can be difficult. Like, I mean, you know, you're working on something, you have a certain amount of time to get the content you need, and yes, you want the beautiful shot, or you want the slider, or you want to pull focus, or you want this, that, and the other. But you kind of have to balance it up, because ultimately that's what you're giving your audience. Are your audience going to be more engaged? Are they going to find the production values high so they connect with what it is? Like, I mean, different things have different production values and they suit different areas. Like if you're YouTube and stream and whatever, it's a certain level of production value. If you're going to make a huge, big cinema release, IMAX feature film, it's a different production value. And they're
actually, I like I'm actually being reminded now of the business language, because you're using the word production value, and it's reminding me of the Pareto principle 80-20. And it's like saying, get the 80% of the value. The next 20% is going to take 80% again. It's not worth the extra effort. No one's going to notice. They're not vested in it. So the production value, once you have the production value, you've got the value. But if you don't have the production value, you've got to get it, and because that's what you're investing in. You got to capture that scene, and until it has the value, so you can then show it to the audience. So we were talking yesterday a bit of a preamble about the cost value relationship. There's a cost to get that value. There's a budget to get that value. But if you don't get the professionalism, is delivering the value in the budget and wrapping the creativity. And I think we were touching on that. But you've got to figure, you've got to let it go, you've got to move on.
Well, yesterday we were talking, and you were saying that in your early part of the career, a filming day consisted of 3 minutes of a script shoot.
Yeah, 3 pages script.
And I know that when we shot Fiddler's Walk, which was about 12, 14 years ago, we were doing 7 pages a minute, but we were using digital as opposed to film.
Yeah.
We still had lighting, but we were able to get things compressed. And now we're hearing people who are doing a feature film shoot in 18 days or 13 days. Yeah. And you're sitting there kind of going, how are you doing that? How can you convey your ideas?
They're 16-hour days, George. They're not 8-hour days. They're 26 days in real life.
But that's the thing, yes. How real is that in yours?
The days were longer years ago. I mean, they were longer. There was no rules or regulations about this, that, or the other. You did insane things all the time. Do you know what I mean?
They're 25-hour days, 8-day weeks. They were brilliant. You had lots more time on your hands.
Oh, I did a 43-hour stint once that completely wrecked me for weeks. And it was because we were trying to meet a deadline, and the job, people hadn't done their job. So that we had a deadline of a Tuesday, and we had this weekend to get a 5-hour show down into, which turned out to be 45 minutes.
Actually, there's a weird thing here, George, now. We're talking, okay, forget the past for a second. We had the last couple of years of madness, and there's all this brand new language of work-life. Well, it's not brand new. It's just there's a heavier emphasis on the work-life balance, value for people, health, mental, your wealth, your mental health, and now even hybrid work and work from home. Now, this industry, there's certain elements of it. Maybe you can do the animation from home, the editing from home, or something like that. I don't know. But the mainstay of it is, how do you think there's been much of a change or adoption in this mental health in, let's say, in this industry now, in the sense of the 50-hour week is it down to a 40 or still there? Has it actually changed, or they're sort of talking a talk but not walking a walk?
There's talk about it, but I mean, realistically, pay was much higher. So you might work insanely hard for 6 months a year, but you're paid for a year's, the pay work. Yeah,
that's it.
Your year's work. So you knew, okay, I'm going into work 3 months. It's going to be absolute torture, but I'm going to love every minute. We're going to run around and do all this stuff and make hopefully an incredible film or whatever at the end. But you knew you got paid enough to give you that break afterwards. It would balance out. Whereas because it's not, well, I mean, some people are getting incredibly well paid, whatever, a lot, but I mean, actors and everything will tell you, you know what I mean? What they used to get paid for an ad was the equivalent of a year's wages in the early 90s.
Yeah.
It's not anymore. It's lucky if it's a week's wages. You know what I mean?
Now, there's a weird one there in the sense of the ad was a year's wages, but if I had no work during the rest of the year, I just got an ad and I thought, geez, that was what I made last year. It wasn't that it was a year's wages. Yeah. It just happens I get one ad a year.
Well, my sister, I remember my sister's wages for her full-time job was £7,000. And what you would expect as an actor in a lead role in an advert was £7,000.
No, Roisin, I'm going to give out to you right now. It's punts. You should know better by now. That's George's pounds. Oh, is she working in England now? Because we were in Puntland in my country.
It was euros, I suppose, at that point. But,
so it's definitely when you're using pounds and punts, we're going back to the early pre-90s or something. Or
well,
pre-80s.
that's what I'm talking about, though. Like, I mean, it was a different. Now, there was far less being made. So there was far less work. There was far less people in the industry. It's, you know what I mean? There's all these, you know. And it was really expensive to shoot. And the reason it took longer was because you made sure every single shot counted. There was no shot ever taken that was maybe not going to be used unless you're on a ridiculously massive budget film.
So this is crazy. We know you could have bought a house for £7,000 back then. But the madness of what you were earning, you're saying the curve has actually gone the opposite way. Inflation's gone this direction, and pay in this industry in certain job sort of titles has gone the opposite way, even with inflation accelerating in this direction. So it's getting tougher and harder to make a living for certain people in the industry, is it?
But there's some interesting things that seem to be happening, because I've worked with a lot of students, and one of the things that you found was that you were trying to use equipment to show how you could do stuff, and the kids were coming in with far more expensive equipment. And the top of the range didn't know how to use it, but they had funds coming from somewhere that gave them, and they thought they could go out and make films, but they had no concept of the story structure, which is one of the biggest problems. Yeah. And I know that I showed someone how to write a script and how to do stuff. And I edited a process after we directed it. They went away and got everything out of sync, and it was all stuttery and they thought that this was brilliant. And I kind of going, you've just destroyed the story. You've totally misunderstood the medium. But because they were all young and they thought they were arty, thought they knew better. Yeah. And there were problems with, because they could knock things out without having the full understanding, they were unfortunately they were giving the full sense to those people that were funding those projects, that thinking that things could be done quicker. And that misrepresentation then sort of influenced the way that accountants, unfortunately, Garvin, were thinking it would cost to make a film. And the reality wasn't there. And then people were working longer hours to try and, to meet that. And I think that was something that, so the technology is getting faster. There's a misconception there. Sorry. I remember when we edited film, it took a certain length of time to process that. When Avid first came in, everybody thought it's a computer, it should work quicker. And you went, no, there are areas in here slow. We still have to think the story through. And now today, there's no difference in the thought process. It still takes the same length of time to think through a process, even in editing, even I think on set. And yet people thinking this should be quicker, this should be faster, you should be able to achieve more. And all you do is burn out. I think that's what we've said. No, it's not that we're meant to be complaining.
Well,
what we're trying to do
it leads to mistakes, and it leads to all sorts of stuff. It's telling a story, whether you're a writer, director, or editor, it takes that time to develop it in your own mind and see the picture and see the emotion. As an editor, the shots I love are the ones where people aren't speaking, because generally they tell you far more. Yeah. And finding them and having them at the right moment in the right place, it's not something that you can go, oh yeah, that will just slot in there. It's not it's not as simple as that. You have to kind of tap into your own emotional journey while creating what you're doing. And if you don't do that, the audience aren't going to connect with it.
Yeah.
Actually, I like what you're saying, because Roisin, you're indirectly touching on what we touched on in the preamble before, which is the journey. If you're in micro-production or indie production, you have many hats. And we talked of, you said, actually, if I could pick one thing, I'd love to be making my living from being maybe the writer, creator. But I found myself moving further into industry in the sense of, because I'm a writer, creator, and I also can wear the hat of producer, director, maybe editor. I'm writing with a bit more in mind of what can be achieved, maybe with budget, or what can be done, versus what could actually, if I wrote free reign, you also touched on this, you have a lovely, passionate project hidden in a drawer somewhere, and it's a £15 million something, or punt, or euros, or wherever the hell it is. But we didn't know that, or we don't know. I'm sure if the accountant stepped in, we might find it's a 17.9 million. We don't really know what it is, but we know it's not a micro budget. No. We know it's a passion project. We know it was you writing the script you want to write without the process shutting you down before you start, which is usually me shutting George down going, the budget is, let's work backwards from the budget, let's package the best production value, but we got to write with the budget in mind and hopefully package creativity. So what's your view on that?
I'm in two minds of that, because I think from a writing perspective, and I find it really hard because I do have that little producer head in me going, oh no, don't put that in because that's going to cost whatever and take half a day. But put it in the script and then sit down with the script that you want to write and then work backwards, because it's surprising what you can make work. Do you know what I mean? Like, I had a scene that I was doing one time and it was like, this whole fire had to happen and I was like, well, sure, you're talking massive, I ended up shooting it in a barbecue. It worked perfectly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can do.
Actually, I love what you're saying again, because in business language, like I hope to God I'm never going to be talking about accountancy too far into the future. But
we have to reprogram
in my past, when giving advice to firms and small SMEs and all the rest of it, the problem was, if you were working the budget and what they had, they couldn't think. They were trying to cut costs in their mind, and they were getting smaller and smaller and couldn't actually grow. And they hadn't even started. We're saying if the rules were thrown away, if the budget was not necessarily unlimited, we're going, you want to open your mind first, exactly as you said. Even in business, you want to go, what could I have? I have my dream plan. I have my 10-year, 5-year plan. If I had £1 million, this is what I could do. If I had $500,000, that's what so we want these scenarios. We want the stretch, and we want the minimum, and we want the max, and we want you to reach in your creativity, in your story. But then, as I said, you can write it in. It's better to have it in and take it out than not have it in and it'd be missing, and you don't know what's missing.
Jaws is the classic one. The mechanical Jaws didn't work.
Yeah,
what did
absolutely.
They used music. What did that do? It made the film far better.
Exactly.
These things.
They also cut the shots down as well. The shots were shorter because they actually gave, the imagination took a. I do artwork, and one of the things that's quite interesting is that if you just draw the shade, the human eye fills in the rest of the shapes. If you've got a person in front of you and there's shading, if it's lit right, the human puts in the rest. And that happens with storytelling. The number of things, you may write something one way and your audience will suddenly interpret it in a way you hadn't even imagined, but they've spotted something just because the way you present it on screen, and their imagination is fired up. And again, we talked about target audience. One of the things that I think that tends to get forgotten is how the audience reinterpret what you're saying on what you're showing them on the screen, and how they will come then to watch that. And that's something I think we're constantly sort of trying to think about. How do we do something that will entice?
Actually, there you go, George. Yeah. I mean, we actually touched on it in a couple of episodes before. We said, Elon Musk is on the journey to plug in the AI in the mind, and they then basically going, if you're watching TV from your mind through your mind's eye, you've got full CGI, full costume drama, no budget. Your mind is filling in the gaps, and so actually that's going to be the best new film going forward. We're in danger when that happens, but before that happens, in indie production, if we sort of take that perception, it's what you don't see and your mind fills in. We're going, we want to imply there's something in the forest. We want to talk about the aliens and the horror, but if we show the Muppet puppet Fraggle and we go, they're just like, forget this piece of rubbish. You're going, but if they don't see it, then they themselves will be filling it in. So that was your Blair Witch for about 90% of the movie. You're going, a bunch of kids running around the forest, kicking over leaves and tree trunks and screaming their heads off. And 5. We're not going to worry about the outlier, but by God, your mind filled in the CGI.
Well, there's a film, I think, out recently, a horror movie called Silence or something. And the whole thing is about everybody trying to be as quiet as possible and trying to work out ways to communicate to one another. And there is silence. There's not even music, I think, in it. And the tension builds up because you're kind of going, what the hell is going to happen next?
You just imagine someone in the cinema eating popcorn. You're going, you'd be fucking...
Yeah, if you heard them crunch, you're kind of
on the way. Shut up! So now we're back to going, it's to try and get that production value with minimum budget.
That's the creativity within it, and that's what filmmakers are there to do. You know what I mean? We can have discussions on finance. I know they have to work together at some level. But if you start crowding the mind of your creatives, you're not going to get the best product. You know what I mean? You have to, that's why there are those different areas to me anyway, is because you have to give people the space to do really well at what they're good at and allow them to do that. And people will find ways around it. I mean, when you read a book, I certainly visualize every moment as I read. I don't read with like a blank mind and just see words. I see what's trying to be put.
Now, have you gone to many a cinema afterwards after reading the book and going, that didn't bloody happen? I'm very disappointed with that. And you go, and I can see where they cut with your mind's eye, you're going, well, we know why that wasn't in there. No budget.
But I've gone to the pictures, I've gone to the cinema and watched a movie, and I've come out and I've got my impressions of what it was. And I listened to a couple of people behind me talking about the movie, and I went, that's not the film I've just watched. What was the film you just watched? And they have a totally different concept of what the last hour and a half was they went through. And I kind of go, whoa, that's fascinating just to sort of explore those sort of ideas. And I think that, you know, I mean, you were talking about a short time ago trying to get back to work, and we've discussed this before, the kind of imposter syndrome. And over the last few years, I've gone into training to become a counselor. And it's like people watching, and it's fascinating just listening to these people. And one of the things you're in a kind of triad situation where someone's observing another person that's counseling, and the other person is the person being counseled. And I started to experiment with the idea of being a character from one of my movies, which happened to be a girl called Aoife, and in another one, an 83-year-old man.
I'm not even going to comment on this one.
But the thing was, but I didn't have to do anything. All I had to do is tell stories.
Be aware what you're doing.
No, absolutely. But I think that exploring the way that people think and the way that people interpret, and playing around with those roles in a very, very simple sort of scenario with three people observing one another is so fascinating, because without machines and stuff around you to capture that, you're creating stories, or you're seeing stories evolve that can help look at, you know, create tension and all kinds of stuff that was going on. And as an observer, which is what the audience is, you're suddenly seeing this interaction which becomes so fascinating between two human beings. And that only needs two cameras.
And it feels incredibly tense. And there is this kind of move, and I think it's because they're like, oh, the kids are just watching YouTube and it's all quick, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And that's fine. And I totally get it. Mine do. Like, they play games, they're doing this, that, and the other. But there's still a lot of kids who are literally watching someone else play a video game for 6 hours.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
No, that's what we've touched on this before.
Yeah.
I want if they're honest, I want them to be a creator, not a user. Because if you're just consuming someone else being the...
But they're still going back and watching a lot of films that I would have watched as a child, because the story is there. They're interesting characters, and they can relax and watch them. The reason they watch those YouTube, it's a form of meditation, I think, to some extent.
Well, something that was fascinating, because I did what you're saying. I actually watched my 32-year-old son playing a tank game. No, it was they landed these soldiers into an island and they had to accomplish something. Yeah. But he was in Canada. And I was sitting there with him. He was talking to his mates in Ireland and Texas and all sorts. Yeah. And they were all playing. They were actually like soldiers going on a mission, having a discussion about what it was like back home, and then suddenly having to deal with a crisis that occurred as the characters. And then they went back to being, and you went, there's a drama in that, which is really quite fascinating to watch.
Well, actually, we're back to George. If you think of the Minecraft YouTubers, what they do is, beyond the game now, they've created an entire story. They've actually scripted it. They're going on a journey. It's an adventure. They're going to find X and fight Y. And this is the narration, and the narration is nearly comedy. And then they start realizing, I'm running out of lines on myself here. Yeah. So there's 4 and 5 of them now as a group and that's what my kids were watching when they were a little bit younger. There's more chance of a comical, improv script around the framework of structure of adventure, which they started putting into it. So these are nearly the filmmakers of tomorrow, but these are actually making more than the filmmakers of today, sitting at home, as I say, on a regular basis in their underpants, basically narrating Minecraft. And I'm going, I'm trying to give business advice. I'm going, no, I need to be talking to them. It's the other way around.
Well, you look
the teacher, the pupils become the teacher.
A lot of those people have, 30 or 40 employees who play and record.
Now they have, exactly.
And then they narrate over them. So they're not actually necessarily playing the game. You know what I mean? So they write the script.
But there are lots of creatives now. There's the game engines of Unity and Unreal now are being used by filmmakers to create, virtual worlds that look almost. I mean, Mandalorian, the Star Wars movie, was using them to project, and they got the right reflections. But the kids are playing around with these tools and coming up with amazing worlds that they wouldn't normally have been able to do.
The thing is, George, the kids don't realise they've already done the training.
Yeah.
They're using drop-down menus. I started using Celtex the other day or something. And what it is menu-driven. You start going, what's in every box? What does it do? The kids are actually building worlds, even at the most basic level, with the tools available, being web tools. And the strange thing is, they're actually already geared up at 14 years of age to go work in animation, do character rigging. They're building their characters, they're putting on their armor, they're picking from different structures, they're manipulating them. I go, actually, the amount of learning that's now employed in these, what seemed like games, half the time my son is actually getting ready for the game. It's the pre-structure, the pre-arming, the pre-planning. And therefore, it is actually, I'm very excited because most of the tools of some of the jobs in this industry going forward is, as you said, cinema or film is now going to be more a real engine than possibly out in the wilds. I spotted an article there the other day which showed drone capture in the burn to then map using possibly 3D technology and real engine so they can actually do green film and reduce carbon emissions and have 90% of the movie shot possibly on blue or green screen in a studio, but it looks as pretty much as they've took the outside and brought it inside in tech.
Yeah.
But that is
we
massive.
can use them with rain cover, so you don't have to have that problem.
Absolutely. But, I mean,
now I should be asking questions of Roisin there.
Yeah.
Are you starting to work in Real Engine?
Unreal.
Do you want to stay in micro indie production to get that work from your 50 grand to your 50 million?
I was associate producer on a TV show called Gamer Mode, so I worked with a lot of the streamers and a lot of the developers over a period of time, and it was fascinating. I found the whole thing really, really interesting, and an awful lot of kid gamers, and so that was a huge.
Well, I'm going to stop you 1 second, Roisin. Do you know indirectly you're working with your future investors?
Yes, I know,
because they have the money. So actually, there's your new people going forward, because that's what Netflix is saying. What YouTube star have you wrapped into your micro production that has 10 million followers that we can convert into ROI subscribers?
Oh, yeah. And that is it. I mean, the number of followers people have is a huge part of it. But you also find, and if you work with a lot of the TikTokers or the streamers or anything else, their interests lie in a different space, maybe, than the people who actually want to invest in bringing them on board sometimes. And
have you been working with the TikTokers, just as a matter of question? Right. Can you turn me and George into a TikToker? Should we be TikTokers?
Oh, I don't know about
that. Should we be TikToking?
I'm not sure what the thing is. You dance. Depends.
Oh, we can shake the wild thing. We can do the
talking about
thrust.
Unreal. Yeah, I've actually got Garvin as a 3D model dancing almost. He's already been in the virtual world dancing around and doing
an awful lot of TikTok we know is this. There's a TikTok in which you're implying, which is to do the little shake, do the little touch, do the little push. But the biggest growth in TikToking is actually in the business area moving in. And actually, whether it be coaching, mentoring, whether it be, I don't know, even Bitcoin. But I'm saying it's not just about the 3-second dance with a kid. It's basically,
But even those 3-second dances with a kid aren't 3-second dances with a kid. I mean, those TikTokers work incredibly hard. They create a huge amount of content. They're very careful about what they do. A lot of the ones that I've met, they're really, really passionate about a lot of important issues. They use their platform to highlight things that they're worried. You know what I mean? And yes, it's lots of fun and it's lots of games and lots of play, and some of them are really young, some of them are older. A lot of them are bringing a lot of social issues to the fore that they care about. Now we'll
ask the question again. should we be TikTok?
Definitely.
Right, will you help us? Because I don't know. I mean, no, well, this is the weird thing, because actually what you just said there was business 101. People, not the consumer of TikTok. That's just me going, what happened to my life? I'm 20 minutes in, I don't know even what I'm doing. I'm watching this rubbish. Now, what I'm watching is, if this bunch are the influencer and I'm watching them and they have 100,000 or 1 million followers, they've choreographed it. They've planned it. They're dealing with social issues. They're trying to educate. They're trying to entertain. And they actually are building and talking to their customer base. You're going, they are closer than anyone in the film and or in the industry than anything else I can see.
Yeah.
We need to be following them.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And I mean, you have to produce content for that. That's 25% of our population. You know what I mean? Ignoring them isn't a good, you don't want to be ignoring a quarter of the population.
And what are you finding that their interests are? I know that it could be broad ranging, but are there key themes that are coming out that they're really starting to get into?
Well, it is very broad. I mean, there's a huge number of kids who are into it. There's a social issues and human rights are very substantial in what an awful lot of them talk about and are worried about and think about, as well as things like global warming and the environment. Yeah. And they kind of, I think they turn it off to an extent because they have to be kids sometimes, you know what I mean? But there's a lot of anxiety and about those things and into the future. I mean, they don't see a path that maybe our generation or the generation before us would have seen. They don't see how they can go to college, work hard and buy a house. To them, that doesn't exist. Because no one can anymore. And so there's a lot of anxiety about, so then they're looking for these, if I become TikTok famous, I can get whatever I want. They don't see any other path ahead of them. And I think there's a lot of kind of queries and questions about that they have. They don't know how they can grow up, move out and have a happy ever after life. And
and I think that's becoming more and more difficult. Yeah.
So, I mean, for teenagers, that is there. And like, whether we like it or not, it is there. And it is the stress. So,
I'm going to stop you and go, hold on a second. I know I was 30-something before I left my mammy's house. I'm going, I don't think it's just teenagers anymore. Most of 40-year-olds I know are moving back in with the parents. and you're going, it's so we have this growth.
The things that happen in society affects young people. They're not blind. They don't just not look at it. They see what's happening in Afghanistan or they see what happened in America. Like, I remember a kid I know literally crying over something political that happened in the States because they were and I think she was probably maybe 9 or 10 at the time. You know what I mean? They take in information, they try and process information as well as they can. And I think sometimes we underestimate how...
I think,
Now, indirectly, I'm going to swing back around again, George, for a second and go, where is the future audience of tomorrow? Are they in cinemas? Are they on Netflix? We are. But I can't even get my kids into the same room. And they might be 17 and 18 going to college now, but they aren't even on television or they're purely consuming through their own packaged and created channels.
I think the issue is that you have to go and talk to these people. Yeah.
Like, what is the content for 14 to 25-year-olds on television?
No, I suppose we're back to talk about the target market for your creating our indies and all the rest of it, or it's saying if the national broadcasters are dead men walking in most countries based on reducing license fees and public service type salaries, they're being bypassed by the streams.
Yeah, I mean, I strongly believe in public broadcasting. I think it's incredibly important, and anything that sort of affects that worries me. But just because a younger group, it doesn't mean they're not, they are politically engaged. So where are they getting their information from at the moment? Are they getting their information online? That may or may not be, balanced or whatever.
False news. And
So are we going to start putting more political program aimed at younger people on TV? Is that going to be there, or are we going to...
Well, it won't matter because they're not watching TV, so they're not going to see it.
It depends, like which comes first, But and then are you going to put that out on a, you know, across YouTube, across your TikTok? Are you going to put it out to places where they are at the moment and give them the longer version?
Well, something I found very interesting.
You're going to give it.
Yeah, a lot of students that I was working with, 16, 17-year-olds. I mean, the college used to put up various different barriers for them to access information, but they all knew how to circumvent that and gather the information. The difficulty was trying to get them to do. It wasn't a difficulty in actual fact. It was just that if the adults didn't think about them as people and taught them as children, then they would respond to those adults as whatever picture they wanted to paint them. But if you actually treated them as human beings and started to negotiate with them, talk to them, you got some amazing conversations and amazing philosophies coming from them that were really eye-opening. And you went, oh my God, I didn't realize, you know, and that's by engaging those people and starting to chat to them at their level, not a level higher or lower. It's going and meeting them and being open to their ideas was an important part of the process, I think.
It's kind of like we were talking about it yesterday. It was like, I have stuff to learn off a 19-year-old in the same way as a 19-year-old might have stuff to learn off me. Do you know what I mean? It's not
well, I know that when I was teaching...
inferior relationship. It's two individuals who have something, you know?
Well, I used to teach 16 to 18-year-olds and even higher, and I so happened to have two youngsters that were that age at that point. And I would go into them and say, if I gave that, what would you think? That, you know, they would guide me in what to do for the materials to teach. And I went, right, okay, I now have an understanding, so I could deliver. And those ideas then became appealing because I'd used a reference that helped guide me and take my biases away from that. But I do think that a lot of people that are funding projects, you know, broadcasters or even the TikTokers and Facebook, they're motivating the way that people should do stuff without considering what the philosophies of those processes should be and how they would damage or influence the people that are there. The youngsters are very much attuned to...
They're still looking for production value. Everyone from all angles are saying they're not letting this out unless this production has value because they've invested in it. They want their audience to like it. They want to represent themselves as brand me. So the weird thing is, that's what I like about, you know, there's unprofessionals out there and there's the professionals. There's the users and the consumers, but there's the creators, and the creators want it to be consumed under all headings up, from theatre to cinema to TV and to social media channels. We want an audience. We want to be validated by our audience, and we want, and we're only as good as the last thing we put out, and we're investing in it, and we want to be able to do it again. And that's where indie production comes back to us going, I don't want to be a one-hit wonder. We'd like to do something. We'd like to do it again. We'd like to get, or use it as a testimonial to get a job, because look what I did. I can do this for you with a bigger budget. You know, so what we touched on maybe again yesterday was, if you had the choices, would you rather be the entrepreneur creator, or do you want to be the jobber? Because if all things are equal, that's about this work-life balance talk. This is our life. It's very, very important. Every minute counts. I'd rather be doing something I love for myself than be beholden to someone else. You know, that's the time you give up.
I think you have to do both. You know, you still have bills to pay. Like, I can be...
Oh, no, to say the journey is... that's what every passive income...
Little fun.
No.
I do want to do too.
If you didn't have to do both, you only have to do both because you have to do both. But if you were making enough money from creative entrepreneurship, you don't have to do both.
But I think by not doing things, even if you're going to be locked in a room, writing away, making whatever, I think by not working within the industry outside of that even a bit, even if it's like a couple of times, whatever, I think you're missing out on...
no, that's you're choosing. It's that's a having to versus choosing to.
I think it's very...
I do whatever it is, I don't care. I'm like,
I work for nothing. I make the tea, you know.
No, I think there's
like making and creating, and I love making and creating myself. That's
but you don't want to have to. That's the thing.
You know what I mean?
Well, can I let me just
that can be a zone driver as well. That can push you along and make you do.
One of the things I think that's very important is that I mean, my two sons, when they went to university, worked in Sainsbury's. Okay, both of them, and the eldest lad now is selling Caterpillar stuff for 300 million, all sorts of. But it was the skills that he learnt on the floor of Sainsbury's that's helping him with the bigger job that he's actually doing. And I think, I mean, I've always taught the students that I've had that want to go, you've got to have two streams. You've got to do your creativity. You've got to find time and allocate that time to that, but you've got to go out and do work. But there are other things about social, about how the world works that you learn in those small jobs that gives you the way forward of how to do stuff when you're either older. And it also helps form and structure them as a character and how they would then develop. So without that, it's not having to, it's without, if you like, people watching, you can't really learn how to tell stories and how best to present them.
To meet and communicate with other people. If you're telling a story, you're communicating, you are telling that story. If you're going to work in any area, I think I worked in pubs for years. Had a great time. Worked lots of pubs for a long number of years. And, while I was also working full time in theatre, I was working 15 hours a day because, I was young and full of energy, but the skills the soft skills, that you learn in those situations are priceless, but also the characters, the stories, the mess and the fun, the music that's on, all the atmosphere, how all these things make you feel will add to what you're trying to create. If you know what I mean? Yes. I used to love sitting on buses and listening to other people's conversations because you just literally rob these characters from all around you before you put them into. And that's what you do. So if you're locked away in a room just writing, it can, who are you basing your characters on? Like someone can say one sentence to you in a shop or stop you in the park with a dog or whatever, and it can just ignite a whole idea around a scene or around a show. It could be around anything.
Now, you've wrote a few things now, I'm not going to even name them, but just saying, have those characters been on the bus about 3 weeks later and go, Oi, that's me. I know you wrote me. Don't you dare say it wasn't. Have they recognised themselves?
A friend of mine rang me up. I had sent her a script to read, and she literally rang me, that's me. And I was like,
I remember being on the bus.
Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? That's what we want to know.
But the comedy that you can actually see on the bus, because I remember being in Manchester and I'd been synchronizing film and sound together. And I was quite tired and I sat and looked and there was a woman talking at the other end of the bus and I'm kind of going, oh my God, she's out of sync. How is she out of sync? I didn't know that there was a lady sitting down from the same, area who was talking just out of sight. And I could only hear her. And I was watching this other person and I was kind of going, they're totally out of sync. But that was a filmmaking thing that invaded my sort of bus situation.
George.
I broke the Matrix.
A glitch in the Matrix. But no, Roisin, the weird thing is, with the last couple of sentences here, we're sort of touching on a language that soft skills, working with soft skills in the industry. It's not learning the functional. The functional, that's a given. You're not going to be in the industry unless you've learned that. But what we actually want is that team, that go-to, gelling of family, the family of film was what we touched on as opposed to the business of film. We're going, we want that go-to team of people we like, want to work with, and we want to we don't want an outlier that upsets the cart. Yeah. We want to be able to go do together and enjoy this production team of people and make great content. Yeah. Have you found that little bunch of people? Do you see them on a regular basis? And, what's missing in the industry maybe, and what do we need more of?
I have found loads of people. I've worked with a lot from the time I first started in theatre. I still work with a lot of the same people all these years later.
In the pub, I know you're all lounge girls and barmaids.
No, the ones who worked in theatre with me more so than the ones who worked in the pub, but still some who worked in the pub too. Yeah. But
all meeting in Alcoholics Anonymous now around the table of
and we continue to work and meet in the pub as much as possible. No, I actually work with a lot of people that I worked with when I first started in City Arts Centre in 1994. And I still work with them. So, yes, you do find people that you're going to work with and you're going to stay with. You also find loads of other people as you go along. And I still do work for them. And if I hear of something coming up that I think they're the right person for, I'll make the phone call, or I'll be sending out this. So, and vice versa. Jobs I've gotten are based on people that I've worked with, that I've met at festivals, or I've met, it's the personal relationships that keep the business going.
It's back to the same thing again. We're hearing your left, right, and center. The soft skills we're talking about is the networking. You got to network to get work. We don't particularly want the work, but the network is how you get work. It's those people that like you think of you first. So you got to step out of the virtual room. You got to go to have that pub chat, coffee shop chat, and you got to have the skills. Yeah. But when you have them banked, it's your network get work.
Well, when you're working on something like a film, when you're trying to tell a story, it's a very intimate environment. You know what I mean? And there could be 60 people there, but it's still that, because everyone has the one aim, everyone's working together to try and create. So you want to have people around you, and it's going to be long, it's going to be tiring, it's going to be stressful at times, things are going to go wrong and need to be fixed. And if you have people around you that and you trust, it's going to make that whole job a whole lot.
They allow you to have a little nap and a dribble in the corner and wake you up afterwards.
Pull your hair out for you.
A little cry. It's okay. She's just going to run off and have a hissy fit, and so is George. But they'll be back. They'll be okay. We'll start again. But take two.
When you're sitting in an editing suite at 4 o'clock in the morning and your eyes are like falling out of your head, and you're just going, I just need to get this. And
I've had an Avid that was rebadged with a 45-minute show on it suddenly crashed and everything went. The producer walked out and started banging their head against the wall. I had to reboot and start again, but I had the memory of the film, and I was able to put it together far quicker and solve problems far quicker. So I got used to this idea: if something goes wrong, that wasn't the movie. This is it, and it works. It works really well. Yeah.
Positive, you just know positive mental attitude.
Absolutely, because you've got a deadline to meet, and so everybody else may be screaming.
But PMA will
no. It just worked. It just one of the biggest problems that you found that you had to get over was that you put so much effort into something, you were precious about it. Someone would come along and criticize it, and your world would fall apart. I actually got to the point where I went, actually, don't worry, we'll throw a few things in. They'll criticize it. They'll know what's. But you then suddenly went, actually, I know how to improve this, because I couldn't see that, because that other person, I needed that other person to be my audience, actually, George, to come and say something.
You just hit on something from a previous show talking to, I think it was Francesca, another writer. And it's about that script, or script per se. And we're using the analogy of me baby. I got to let me baby go and let my baby grow. Yeah. And because it's others... if others can't be critical, no, it's not about being critical of it, but maybe that positive critique of it. It's to bring it to the next level of value, to get it out of the drawer, to get it made, to get it seen, to get it heard. But you got to bring it out, and you got to show that ugly baby. I think it was an episode of Seinfeld, and they're all looking at the baby going, "That's the ugliest baby I've ever seen." And they're looking, but this could be your script. Yeah. And to make it a beautiful baby, someone else might have to dress it up, take it apart, put it back together again. Are you precious?
If you have to,
you're precious. What's that film? My precious.
If you have to explain your script to someone, it means what you want is not in the script.
Yes.
You should be able to hand that script to someone, give them a little character breakdown, a little idea of who the actors might be or who you're thinking of, so they have some sort of a mind's eye of that. And if they're reading the script and they don't know exactly what you are thinking, then it's not in the script. And that will transfer into when you're shooting the film, and that will transfer to when you're in the editing room going, why the hell was this not? Yeah. And you can have scenes that you are absolutely love, but they might not move the story forward. They might be in the wrong place, actually. Something happens. Yeah. They might be the right scene, but just in the wrong place. And that needs to be sort of shifted around. And or you have to think about the structure of, because it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yeah.
Actually, the one thing here I'm really getting at is a lot of people were talking about, they can't get the script out of the drawer. They can't get it by a reader. They can't, because there's so many in the queues. This is back to, I think you're getting an awful lot of your scripts out of the drawer, further out of the drawer now, because you stepped out of writing into this further networking or get working, a producer, director, editor. So you can nearly go, when they weren't looking, buy them a pint and put a script in front of them. when they weren't watching, but I mean, but again, do you find that it's a very tough industry for writers to get seen and heard, to get the opportunity to have that conversation?
Well, you learn from that. You learn by directing, you learn by producing, you learn by doing notes for other people's scripts, which you do all the time. You know what I mean? You learn by doing script development for people. You learn by writing bad scripts. It's like anything else, unless you keep doing it and being around other people who do it. And if I take a script that I'm going to direct, it's not mine. I have to I'm looking at it in a really particular way. And I know, because you're always sitting there going, oh, I know what it's like if, someone else takes your script and goes, actually, well, you have to do that. That's just what that's the job. And I actually like working with other directors. I like giving the script over to other people because I kind of feel like a lot of the time they will bring another level to it, So I think it's, you have to be happy to throw out your baby. It just is. It is what it is. And
just not, we had a saying before, you can throw out your baby, just not with the bathwater. You're trying to throw him out and get him dressed.
Well, you're
going to send him off to school with his lunch pack.
You can cut scenes. I've done editing notes for people when they're editing, and you get sent over, and I've been that cruel person who comes back and says,
are you a hard taskmaster? That's what we want to know.
That scene has to go. Like, it's pointless. It's not moving the story forward, and it's just making it as a piece too long. But I've also said the opposite. I've always said I think you should hold in that like 2 more beats. Like holding that shot for it. You know what I mean? So, but I have to think like scenes out of stuff.
A lot of people have a blind spot because they got so close to it, they can't see what the problem is, and they need someone to just pull them back and refocus them. Yeah. And I think that works really, really well. I mean, I've had a film that I shot 12 years ago, and I've edited it, and one of the problems was my dad died in the middle of it, and I couldn't let go, and then I couldn't actually face it. I'd open it up on the computer, and then I'd close it down straight away, and then it got corrupted somewhere on the line, and I've now started to re-edit it, but really? I'm re-editing it now, and we're talking about Unreal. I'm now actually exploring the idea of some of the scenes I had in the movie being done in Unreal and recreating them. But I'm using it as I'm not precious. I just do it when I can, and I'm going to work through it until it's done. But it's only because I've been talking to some of the people we've been having on our show that kind of inspired me to kind of go back to it and not give up, because of all these people that worked on it would like to see what they did.
George's is only at 3 million something in a drawer. Yours is 15.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how are we going to get this 15 million something out of the drawer? Who do you want? Steven Spielberg? Is it Quentin Tarantino? What is the plan for this one?
Oh, for that one, well, first of all, I have to finish it because it's all written out in it started off handwritten in pencil on a refill pad, and then it moved on.
That's Quentin Tarantino. He buys a refill pad.
Well, that's the way I always wrote. And I only kind of moved on to writing on the computer, I'd say, in the last 2 years or 3 years. I always wrote.
Now, do you use Caltex? We're starting with Caltex.
No, I use Final Draft. I invested in Final Draft at the very start and just said, right, that's what, because I found it easier, and I'm not naturally good at remembering. Like, it's like when if going on to use an edit thing, like, I'll be great, I'll be able to do whatever, then I don't do it for 2 months. I come back, I'm like, where do you even start? I can't.
That's normal. That's normal. Everybody does that. I'm having that problem. All the different packages and stuff I've had to learn. You come back and kind of go, oh my goodness.
So much all the time.
Well, the great thing in the name there now, I like it, it's trying to tell you, Final Draft. God's sake, would you get the final draft?
Done, that's it.
And then we can start.
I was actually considering writing it into a novel and then going back at it again. That's what I was, because I haven't finished.
That actually works really well, because I've written 2 feature film scripts and then turned the 2 of them into novels that developed, and now I could rewrite them as scripts, and they would go in a totally different place, which I think is fascinating. That journey is just fascinating. You have to invent those extra hours
in the day, though. The problem you're having here is you have to move away from the PAYE, find that extra time in order to be doing those extra publishing, writing the novel to self-publish while actually getting the draft.
I don't think it has to be.
What you get paid, but I don't have that time.
No, I don't think you have to. It's not one thing or another, and I think we discussed that earlier on. You have to. You can plan these things into your day. I actually spend every morning. And now Garvin says it's not for money, but I actually write 3 pages every day of the week.
That's a really good way to be. Yeah, it's a really good way to be.
Yeah. I was doing that this
morning. 4
morning.
hours on Netflix in the evening.
Well, there's 4 hours for writing.
Probably is. Yeah.
But the thing is that
that's my research.
I'm writing about 1,000 words.
Content is out there, and you create the new content, and there's nothing more heartbreaking, because I have had it happen where someone sends me a script and it's like, I know there's something really, really similar in production at the moment.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, and it is. But like the thing about it is, and the thing a lot of people who are working, do a lot of stuff with the VOD say, it doesn't actually matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That just because one thing came out, it doesn't mean Amazon won't take it.
There's an audience for everything and for both. And actually, if they like one, they want another the same.
Well, you think of Red Planet and Mission to Mars. Both came out in the same year. In fact, both films were called Mission to Mars until the Red Planet one discovered there was another film being made with the same title, and they changed it over. The Robin Hood movies that both came out at the same time. There's all these movies that come out. Yeah. And what it implies is that they're actually good stories, and there is an audience for them, and people will go and watch both movies. I'm doing that all the time. I want to go and watch the same as what I've watched before. Yeah. Oh, here's another opportunity. Yeah. So
I'm going to use a terrible language now, because I'm remembering Stephen Fellows on that little band of, what wins, what doesn't in under 3 million of a budget. Oh, forget the 15 million something for the moment. Or maybe, bring it back in. Is it a chick flick? Is it a horror?
It's actually a series. That's why it's a series, but it's 4 hours. So it's not.
It's an epic. It's a Lord of the Rings. It's a Ben-Hur. Right, that's good. I like that. There's a lot of chariots running around with scantily clad females and males. You're going, so it is a chick flick. That's good. I like that.
No, it's a thriller with murder and intrigue and explosions and set against
Coronation Street. Okay, I have it now.
The backdrop of the unused industrial towns in Pittsburgh. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Is that because they're cheap backlots?
I find them fascinating. I just find them so... I think they have a...
This is where the industrial towns have all gone.
Yeah, all gone. It's all those, where an entire town survived around...
Was one industry.
And that vanished, I always find those sort of what I consider ghost towns fascinating.
Now, I actually read an article, and again, it might have been Pittsburgh, I don't know, and it was actually talking about the ghost town element of maybe the Ford factory. It used to be big car manufacturers or something like that, and they're gone. But now they have multi-billion-pound investments, and it's in their two favourite headings, data centres and film studios. Because what they used to be is big backlots and big factory warehouses, and that's what fits there now.
But it doesn't create an industry, does it?
Data centers don't employ people, you see.
That's the thing. That's it.
No. But the thing is, the whole thing is, it's the heat exchange. So you can have both on a backlot. Yeah. One will feed the other in terms of electricity and green, emissions. It doesn't need much manning. It has the same type of structure.
But that's the problem. It doesn't have much manning. It doesn't bring the people in to create the community, to create the society, and create all the social activities.
Which is actually, we need more space. No, there's lots of space, but the space we want is not empty space, it's studio space. And to get more studio space, it gives us the jobs, because the content plugs into the space, the tax break plugs into that. That will give us 20,000 new jobs. What's the opportunity in Ireland right now for you and people?
There's loads of opportunity. There isn't a studio space to be got all over the UK. It's stuffed. Although I saw an article out today that about uniquely British television, which is anyway, that's now produced. But it is incredibly busy. There's a lack of content. Content makes money. They want more content. And
no, indirectly, we've got to feed back the food chain. It's lack of space is lack of content.
Yeah.
So, and is there lack of people as much as lack of space?
The problem is it comes in waves. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're in studio, obviously it's different. Like in Ireland, we shoot more during the summer. Obviously, we've much longer daylight. It's great for the film industry because you have daylight from 6 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night if you're in the west of Ireland. Yeah. But then vice versa in the winter, we don't have a lot, which is great if that's what you want.
Yeah, we don't need light because we are God. We are omnipotent. We're in a warehouse. We can turn it on and we can turn it off. We're not outside up a field, down a lane in a forest. The space I'm talking about is the 75 million quid they're building it they're creating and inventing the space in tech.
Yes, but is that always going to be the most financially viable way of shooting things? You know what I mean? Like studios are great, and what you can create and make in there is fantastic, and it's brilliant to see more coming up and having those areas there for people to use. But you can't move everything inside a studio.
No.
You know, well, you can, but I personally don't want to. I don't see the value. You know what I mean? I think there are things in Ireland that we have that are far more precious. And I mean, fantastic. They're mapping the burn so they can use it on a 3D, whatever. You know, that's not going to replace someone.
Skellig Islands. You want to be standing on the rock, jumping off the edge.
Now, the burn can be a bit difficult because there's very little Wi-Fi there. It's a hard shooting area to be in. But but I don't think you can necessarily replace it. And I think there's a level of authenticity that could be lost. And it depends on what the content you're making, really. That's the way I would
see. It's not one or the weird thing, as you said, it's not one or the other. There's an audience there's one for everyone in the room. There's every type and everything. So we want the big, actually, I think what we're saying is, and what we were coming across a bunch of shows was, we need the macro industry book to help create the jobs, to hopefully support the micro industry, to give the chance and testimonials to the newbies coming up the track. Because they're the jobs. If you want jobs, if you want art, you're nearly in the micro, because the macro is not going to give you that opportunity because it's investing in output.
But a lot of things are both. Do you know what I mean? There's no
even better.
Why art, you know what I mean? Like, you don't, for something to be artistic doesn't mean it can't cost 25 million quid. It could easily be 25 million quid and be a piece of art. I mean, they're not.
Oh, no. What I'm saying is it won't be a newbie in Ireland that, well, hopefully, if it was, you're 15 million something, if you can attract American money to use Irish studio space and be the art, that's brilliant. But the assumption I'm making as an accountant is most of what's here already has what it wants to do. It's coming over for the job of the service.
It's coming over for 481 and it's coming over for talent.
Absolutely.
It's here for the tax break. It's here for the money.
We know what it's here for. And because a lot of people want to shoot here because they like the crews. The crews are really talented. They're really good. They work really hard. You know, they know what they're getting.
They can extract the art from the artist as the service.
Yeah.
And which is great. But like, I mean, all the things that need to come with that also have to be in place. So if you're going to build a studio, you have to know there's accommodation there for incoming cast. You have to know, you know, all these things, the logistics around it. There's no point in having something shooting forever. I just know one particular thing at the moment, and they booked off an area and there is no coverage there.
Oh,
so
okay.
You can't run a production office with no coverage.
Yeah.
You know, so all these things have to work together, and it's really important that they're really well planned in advance. But also, as a country, we have to decide, you know, like, I mean...
There you go. We're back to the two words. It's all about planning. You know.
Always.
Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show where we've reached the hour and 5 minute point. So normally I do a kind of mini wrap up.
Oh, Jesus, we are. Sorry, I'm just looking at the time now.
Yeah, we've been going for quite some time, which is pretty good. You know, it's been... We've kind of gone through quite a lot. We've gone through how someone might start their career. Yeah. We've also looked at the importance of having a dual career. And what I mean by that is that you have the thing that brings the money in, that gets you up with your craft, hopefully. But the other one is where you develop the kind of creativity and do the thing that you want to do, that you will eventually stock and use to generate income later on in life, God willing, if all goes well. And it's important to have that, because as time goes by, you will have families, you will need cars, you will need somewhere to live, and you have to go home at some point. and you know, so although projects have their own timelines, our lives go on, and you need to fulfill both of those kind of streams, which I think is really quite important. We've looked at, we discussed some editing, which is really quite good. I wasn't sure if we were going to get a chance to do that, but the editing process and how creative, and the story process that's involved, and really the art of looking at the world around you and how that generates stories. We also talked about TikTok, which is an interesting one for us because we don't normally get there. But also one of the valuable things that was in there was the fact that if we listen to the youngsters and listen to where they are, we can start to generate ideas for stories that will appeal to them and nurture that audience towards what we're trying to do. And that's a very important fact. Stay young is the key. Don't think you're getting old. Remember you're a kid at heart and keep on going, and you will work with them and produce stories that they want to hear. And I think that was a fascinating part of the story. Now, that's a kind of mini little wrap up. What I normally do is I like to ask my guests, is there any little thing you'd like to talk about that we never gave you a chance to, just as a kind of closing comment or two?
Yeah, I'm just...
No, stop it going.
I'm trying to think of, I suppose it's one of the things that, particularly for younger people coming through, is don't underestimate the people around you. You know, talk to the granny on the bus, have a conversation with the guy on the road. You know, find out, especially if you want to write and you want to create something in that way, talk to individuals, wherever they are, whoever they are, and I think a lot of the time you'll be very, very surprised at how generous people are and the information and how talented they are. And the information stories that they can give you and share it with you. So I suppose that's what. Yeah.
No, that's powerful. That's powerful, because I know that I'm doing that. And I'll talk to this other gentleman over here, Garvin. Garvin, any words you'd like? Any wisdom that you'll bring out?
Yeah. I'm going to say the opposite. Don't overestimate the people around you, because they're a bunch of smoke and mirrors, makey-uppy as they go, will promise you the world on its mother and deliver nada. So be sure to know what you're dealing with. Make it real. Don't believe the hype. So we'll catch you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show and look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and click on the bell for notifications.